everyone, to a call for judgment. This is a story that should be shared all over the mainstream media, but of course they're not sharing it. But it needs to be shared, and that is this story about how senators in Congress have been issued satellite phones, offered demonstrations on upgraded security devices. So you might be saying, well, why would that matter if they have satellite phones? Well, with a grid shutdown, which a lot of people don't think is going to happen, but I fully believe will happen. I fully believe the programming that they've been placing out there about the weakness of our grid, this lack of security at our power grid, Russia, it's all going to tie together to a grid shutdown, which is going to be a longer period of time than people think. Now, a lot of people are like, well, that won't happen because they don't want to shut off the phones and things like that. But I don't think there's anything that could happen that would drive people more insane in this society we're in now than not being able to access their phone or the internet. Okay? Every time I go out, no matter where I go, if it's if I go to the dentist, if I go to the grocery store, people are walking around any second they have. If they're in line at the grocery store, instead of like getting their food up on the on the thing, right? Putting the thing down, putting the food up while they're waiting in line, they're on their phones. People are constantly just looking down on their phones, which again will be transitioned to where they see it out of their own eyes. But a potential grid shutdown would shut phones down, which I believe would make people put their heads through walls. It will cause chaos. People will not have food. They will not be able to contact one another. But conveniently, our lack of leadership in Congress, all these puppets who have been placed there, have been issued satellite phones. So in case of an emergency, they can contact one another and be in touch with one another. How convenient, right? Are they not telling us that something's coming at this point? I mean, I just covered over on my website about the second wave that's just hit China and how there's going to be shutdowns and lockdowns. They're already talking about shutting down concerts, sporting events, etc. Right? So we already know that's in place. The WHO, I'm trying to say it to avoid the algo, the WHO has already told us that the next one's going to be worse and it's coming very, very soon, right? And Bill Gates has written a book telling us that it's coming soon. So we know that they have things in place, right? Because we know Agenda 2030, which now they're calling Agenda 2025, is ramping up, right? So people don't see it because their blinders are on. What are they blinded by? Well, they're blinded by all the nonsense you hear in the media, right? Talking constantly about the left and the right and Trump and Biden. They're all playing their roles. And then suddenly, in the blink of an eye, something's going to happen where our own government shuts the grid off. We know they want to transition to green energy. And we know that they're not going to stop until they do because they can control us more with green energy. They can control they can control our thermostats, our cars, and that's what it's all about. It's about, obviously, control, which I've said millions of times. So there's something in the works. And the fact that senators have been issued satellite phones maybe would get people suspicious. But of course, they already have something in place to make, to deflect off of it, and that's January 6th, because they used January 6th, even though every single person in Congress was in on it. The CIA created it. The DOJ helped support it. The NSA was also behind it. And the FBI put plans in place, right? We all know this. This couldn't be more obvious except to the blind sheep out there. And I hate to even call them sheep, zombies out there, right? So they hear January 6th, like, oh, okay, it makes sense for Congress to have satellite phones, as if, the January 6th attack can have something to do where you would need a satellite phone and there'd be a massive grid shutdown or a massive false flag attack from Russia, which would really be our own government. Oh, okay. So amid growing concerns of security risks to members of Congress, 50 senators have been issued satellite phones for emergency communication. People familiar with the measures told CBS News the devices are part of a series of new security measures being offered to senators by the Senate Sergeant at Arms, who took over shortly after the assault on the Capitol on January 6th. Oh, man. Possibly the worst PSYOP false flag ever created. But the satellite phone technology has been offered to all 100 senators. CBS News has learned at least 50 have accepted the phones. They've all got them. Okay, let's be real. Which Senate administration staff recommend senators keep in close proximity during their travels. In testimony before the Senate Appropriations Committee last month, Senate Sergeant at Arms Karen Gibson said satellite communication is being deployed to ensure a redundant and secure means of communication during a disruptive event. Oh, well, I thought we had 5G. I thought, oh my goodness, we can download The latest Smash Mouth song a lot faster. And yes, I just referenced Smash Mouth. I don't know why. Thinking of the worst bands possible. The latest Nickelback song you could download in a millisecond faster than 4G. So why would we think with 5G that these people would need satellite phones, right? Now, satellite phones likely would not work underground. So this has nothing to do with them going into hiding, needing a satellite phone. This has to do with a grid shutdown, because a grid shutdown and a cell tower shutdown would be the only reason that these people would ever need satellite phones. And again, we've heard about how wonderful 5G is, how fast everything is, how efficient everything is, how people have better service, right? So again, nobody's suspicious. Just hypothetically, say January 6th was a real event that wasn't staged by our government. Just say hypothetically. How would any of the people who stormed the Capitol have any type of a way of shutting down the power grid or shutting down 5G towers, right? Now, maybe they have a PSYOP in place where, MAGA Republicans go and they, destroy the power grid, which would make no sense at all. Because if they were playing the role of the MAGA Republican, then they wouldn't want the grid shut down, because one, who would want no power? And two, why would they want to transition to green energy? Because everyone who's, even though they don't understand, everyone who's Republican should understand what green energy is really about. The whole purpose of it. I mean, it's really easy to see when they're openly telling you, especially in the UK, they're like, we're going to control your thermostats now. We're going to set the temperature in your home, right? And if we don't like you, we're going to make it really, if you're speaking out against Big Brother, we're going to make it like 85 degrees in your house, right? And sweat you out. Or in the winter, we're going to put the air on. All these things, people are like, no, they wouldn't do that. Oh, they want to get rid of your gas stove. They don't remember the story. Some of you might remember. I doubt anyone even remembers at this point. But I covered this sometime this year. They were banning the use of fireplaces in the UK, and nobody was suspicious. They were like, carbon emissions from the fireplace. So they're literally telling you, we don't want you to have the ability to even heat yourself, or use a fireplace if the power is off, to survive. That it's more important to the carbon emissions. So it's the greatest. It's not. I don't know if it's the greatest scam ever created, but I guess it is, because we're seeing more and more people buy into it. We're even seeing people who are quote unquote Republican buy into it. Regular people. Obviously, the people in Congress are on board with this. The Republicans, they're like, oh yeah, we need to do something, but we don't need to fully focus on it. But they still support it. All the actors in Congress who again are just playing roles in Congress. But hypothetically, like I was saying, if the event of January 6th was real, why? Just explain why and how. People who stormed the Capitol, who we saw walking around aimlessly, taking photos and things like that, right? That was the crap that they showed us, right? That's what we get shown, but we're supposed to believe that those people would have the ability to shut the entire power grid down to where people in Congress wouldn't be able to access a cell phone? Oh, absolutely. I mean, how do people not see this stuff? So the Department of Homeland Security Advisory said satellite phones are a tool for responding to and coordinating government services in the case of a man-made or natural disaster that wipes out communication. So the man-made one would be them shutting the grid off. The other thing would be them creating a natural disaster, using HARP and CERN to create a massive tsunami, a massive earthquake, something along those lines, which again, either way, pick your poison. Man-made or natural disaster, they're both created by the United States government, which is really sold out to China, okay? And they want to destroy our way of life, and they're doing everything they can to sabotage this country, to sabotage us, to distract us, to get us to fight, to get us to cancel each other out, to get us to ask for censorship, right? On both sides. That's why it's so important not to ask for censorship, but people do. Oh, it's hate speech. Oh, really? Tell me 10 years ago what hate speech was. Oh, well, it was you not agreeing with somebody else's sexual preference. Oh, I forgot about the saying when I was growing up, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I haven't heard that in quite some time. That used to be just a common saying that they would tell people to make sure that they weren't, upset if somebody said something to them. And, 20 years ago, nobody had their feelings hurt. You know what I mean? Like, oh, somebody called me fat. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna go cry about it. And then I'm gonna ask them to cancel them forever talking again because That's fat shaming. I mean, they're so dumb that they don't see, fat shaming, hate speech, that all this stuff is so that we cancel each other out, we censor ourselves, and we empower Big Brother. So, back to the story at hand here. They say Gibson has also opened an office demonstration space in the basement of the Russell Senate office building to offer senators and staff an exhibition of new home state office security upgrades. The demonstration room offers exhibitions of duress buttons, mail screening devices, and safety glass to reduce the risk of attacks. And one of the things that they were talking about is that I guess there was a car that was going towards the White House, some psyop. A guy in a U-Haul crashed his car, and they were trying to say, oh, he was going to the White House to go after Biden. So that's, part of the reason, again, even though, this story is from a little bit earlier than that occurring. They were already talking about this a couple weeks ago, but because of that story, they're saying that, people in the White House feel like they're in danger, and that's the only reason that they're getting satellite, even though they have a military protecting them, and, beyond the amount of security ever necessary for any human being protecting them. Like, they're listening to people like me, and they put us on lists, and they monitor where we go, or, try to monitor what we're thinking, right? And again, they want to know what you're thinking. That's why they eventually, they want these brain chips in there so they can pretty much read your mind to see if you're thinking about doing something. But in reality, people just stop participating in this. If they shut the TV off, they stop participating with the government and realize, hey, all these guys in Congress are working together, okay, on both sides. None of them have our best interest at heart. We can see that if you ever watch these debates in the House. They just go after each other. Nothing gets done. Like, nothing. There's no impeachments. There's no They just do like, oh, we're investigating the FBI. Oh, and then they're like, oh, we found the FBI's corrupt. Okay, so do something about it. That's what you're here to do. Oh, instead they just rile you up. They do nothing. The proof's in the pudding that the Republican Party is completely controlled. They don't do anything. Don't they have the control of the House now? They do nothing. They're sitting there because they're going to take the blame for the debt ceiling and all that, which I'll cover in a separate video. So it's important to note that these people are now running around with satellite phones because, well, they have something planned. Something, like the article says, man-made. That's right, man-made. Although I guess we could just say demon-made, because none of these people in Congress are men or women. They're demonic at heart. They're literally they're demons, right? So let's just say demon-made. And they're going to create something. And there's, the stuff with the outbreak. You can expect false flags on the power grid. I mean, that's been obvious over the years. I've covered it so many times. And they've told us so many times. They're like, our power grid is completely unprotected. Something's going to happen to our power grid. Something's going to happen to our power grid. Something's going to happen to our power grid. And then in Congress, they're like, we need to get rid of our power grid and bring in a green energy grid, even though it won't have the capacity to keep your home lit for 24 hours or your heat or your AC on for 24 hours. It'll give you just a little bit of limits of what you can do inside your prison cell. That's how sick and twisted these people are. Again, these demons are. And that's what this is about. So expect something, obviously. I mean, we know something's coming. It's been too quiet for about a year now. They had to take their foot off the pedal a little bit so that people can kind of, not get too suspicious, kind of go back to the way things were a little bit, but continually distract people with nonsense to keep people divided. So, members of Congress getting satellite phones, nobody covering it, nobody cares, nobody's suspicious, because nobody has a clue. I thank everyone for being here. Hope you're doing well. God bless all of you and your families.